Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today, I have the honor to speak with Jason Barnard. Jason is a brand search engine results page guy, or SERP guy. He is also an author, a digital marketing consultant, and much more. Jason is an enthusiastic guy and has experience as a punk folk musician, a blue dog, and even spent some time on a deserted island, if you can correct me if I'm wrong there. So Jason, I want to thank you for coming on. This is an absolute pleasure. I mentioned this before we got started. I'm really excited to have you on today. But I like to usually introduce my guest by asking what kind of got you into search engine results page. I have no clue what that even is. Like, what kind of got you into that? What exposed you to that type of field?
Right. Okay, right. Actually, the thing is, I forget that people don't really necessarily understand. I talk about this all day long. So search engine results page for me is just so obvious. And when I say SERP, people say, oh, what does that mean? And it's on the book behind me, the fundamentals of brand SERPs. And I assume people know what SERP is. Search engine results page is what you see on Google when you make a search on Google. So if you search for buy red shoes, it's the result that you see on Google, and then you click on a link and you go and buy your red shoes and you look incredibly great in them. And I specialize in the results that Google shows when people search a brand name or a person's name or a film name, which is a little bit of a niche speciality.
That's kind of cool. I mean, I think Google, I'm involved with a lot of business. I would say I'm a business side of things. So I understand like kind of how Google operates. So it's an interesting company, and I mean we can talk about that as we kind of dive into this. But I want to ask you this: what motivated you to like get into that field? What was the reasoning behind it? Was there like a mentor or an experience? What kind of got you into that?
Yeah, I'd forgotten that was the question. It wasn't what is a SERP. The question was, how did I get into search engine results page? And the answer is this blue dog here.
Huh.
You mentioned that I was doing cartoons, and this is the punk folk bass player. This is my life as a kind of an illustration, which is a lot of fun. It starts with my childhood as a punk in the countryside, and moves through a counting horse, a dog playing a wolf playing a double bass, blue dog and yellow koala, a big black evil dog, and a flying falcon, which is where I am now. And I got into it because of the blue dog. My ex-wife and I, after being a punk folk musician at this point, I decided I wanted to be a children's musician. So I wrote some songs for kids and I pitched it to the record companies, and they said, oh, we can't release that. You're a punk folk musician and people won't accept it. And my wife and I decided to create the Blue Dog and Yellow Koala, and she wrote a story around the world with Boowa and Kwala in 12 songs, and she did a genius job of bringing together these 12 kind of disparate songs that I'd written and recorded, and created a story out of them based on a blue dog, a big blue dog, which was me, and a small yellow koala, that was her. The big blue dog takes the yellow koala around the world, and it was absolutely beautiful. And what we then did was, this was 1998, which shows how old I am. And Google was just incorporated that year, and I made a website to show the songs and to show the story using Flash. Adobe Flash, which was Multimedia at the time, and got into the web that way. And obviously to get people onto the site, I needed to learn SEO, and I was either, is it lucky enough or intelligent enough to focus on Google? And I ended up with 5 million visits a month to this website for children aged up to 10 years old.
That's incredible. The story behind that too is so cool. I love when people like what you were talking about, like create something from scratch and then go about doing that. So, you talked about the Google, like that you had to do SEO to kind of get into that. I kind of want to know, like, what goes into that? I think a lot of people, all they see is you type in, I want to buy some shoes, like you said at the beginning, or I want to do this, or how to start a business, or whatever your question is. How does that like generate results? What's kind of the process that happens behind the scenes there?
Yeah, well, I mean, Google obviously doesn't share how it figures this stuff out. But if we take a little step back and we look at what's happening, is Google's role or Google's aim is to get its users to the solution to their problem as efficiently as possible. Mm-hmm. Every time you search into Google, you've got a question or a problem, and you're looking for the answer or the solution. And Google's job is to make sure that that movement from having a problem to finding the solution to that problem is as smooth as and efficient as it possibly can be. So they try to work out which page on the internet contains the solution to the problem they're expressing when they've made the search. And back in the days of the blue dog, in my blue dog period, that would involve Google counting the number of times one of the words that the person had typed appeared on the page. Then it would count the number of links coming into that page, and then it would put the one with the best balance of words and the best number of links at the top, and so on and so forth. And you look back to 2008, which was when I stopped doing this. Google was still basically just counting words in pages and counting the number of links coming from one site onto that page. And the results weren't that brilliant, if you remember, which you might not because you actually look very young. That you would go through, the first 5 pages, you would keep clicking through on Google until you found something that was more or less what you were looking for. And today, we expect Google to get that best result, the most efficient solution, or the most efficient route to the solution to our problem, right at the top. The world has changed, and that's where, kind of from my perspective, things have got interesting. Counting words and counting links is boring. This is really interesting.
I 100% agree. The world is changing. It's getting a lot more, I don't want to say complicated. When you mentioned Google in 2008, the funny thing is I actually don't remember a day without Google. Like it's really weird to me. I mean, I even talked to my parents and I'm like, what do you guys do before, pre-Google, pre-internet? I don't know anything besides that. I was born I'll date myself here. I was born in 2002. I was like, Google was already a company type thing. And I was 6 when you mentioned they were still counting all that numbers. And I remember
You should have been watching The Blue Dog and the Yellow Koala.
I should have, yeah.
You're exactly the right age for Boowa and Kwala.
I probably should have been that guy. I don't know. I was kind of into sports and all of that. So I didn't watch too many cartoons when I was young. The only thing I remember watching was, I don't know if you're familiar, was Curious George. It was on TV though. So
yep.
That's the only cartoon I really would watch. So, but yeah, I should.
Right. Well, Boowa and Kwala are still there, so you can go and have a look, and you'll think my 6-year-old self probably would have quite liked this.
Oh, 100%. Once this interview's done, I'm gonna go check that out. I want to see what that is, and I bet I probably would love that. That would be so cool. But I kind of want to get back to this. How did things change? What was the approach like? I mean, I don't want to. I don't know if this is the right question I'm asking here, but how things change from just counting the links and the words that were typed in. What are they kind of doing today? What's kind of changed? Because you kind of mentioned that there.
Right. Well, there are multiple layers going on, and I'll try to kind of explain them in a way that makes sense. Number one is we used to just have 10 blue links, which was basically web pages you could visit to find the solution to your problem. And then they started indexing, getting in, understanding videos and images and maps, and that's called universal search. And they brought all of that together so that then they started inserting the videos and the images and the maps into the results themselves. So today we don't really expect to see just 10 blue links, because the solution to my problem might be in a video. And I would like, as an ideal, efficient solution for my problem, to click on the video and go straight to the video and get that answer in the video without having to scroll through the page and try and find it. So number one is Google has introduced this idea of universal search, which is the universal different types of results that it can bring together. So it's kind of it changed from this text-based list to a multimedia presentation of potential solutions to your problems. And if you search for a famous person, you'll see videos and images all over the place, and a knowledge panel, which is Google's summary of what it understands about the person. You'll see that what it's trying to do is say, here are all the possible ways you can research this person. and you just click on the one that you think is the most appropriate. And that's kind of where I come in, is I say to somebody, you want Google to present the content that you think represents you the best. And you can control what Google shows, because Google wants to show your audience what your audience is going to find valuable and helpful and interesting. And it's up to us as people, famous or not, to explain, to educate Google what our audience is actually interested in. And that's the cusp. No, it's not the cusp, it's the crux of everything that I do every day. So that's point number one. And then if we look at the text kind of counting and link counting, is I mentioned that Google has a summary of the person, but what it's doing is building what we call a knowledge graph, which is basically an encyclopedia for machines that the machine can read and understand. So it's moved from from counting characters in a word, so JASON space BARNARD.
Yes.
It would just count that string of characters and say, okay, that page must be about Jason Barnard because it's got that string of characters 15 times. Now it says, I understand who Jason Barnard is, and I can link all of that together. So it's not counting words, it's understanding the world like a child would.
That's, I don't know. For the listeners that are tuning in, I bet they probably have mixed feelings about that, right? Like, I mean, essentially I don't want to throw this word out there. It's essentially artificial intelligence, right? Like,
yep, it is 100%. Absolutely. The whole thing is driven by let's say machine learning. Artificial intelligence is something a little bit different in the sense that artificial intelligence is trying to emulate a human being. Machine learning is a machine trying to learn to do something a human being would do, but do it quicker, better, more efficiently. So we're talking about machine learning rather than artificial intelligence. So don't think this machine is actually a child and it's becoming incredibly intelligent and we've got that freaky future that everybody thinks about. You have engineers at Google who give this child machine information. They give it a mathematical set of formulas for it to work with, and they say that's the result we want. They give it examples of the result they're looking for, and the machine tries to figure out the best way to get to that result. Then what Google engineers do is they analyze a big set of the results, and they say, this was right, that's wrong, this is right, this is great, this is awful, this is bad, this isn't right, you've misunderstood here, and they feed it back into the child algorithm as corrective data. So they're constantly re-educating, correcting the child, and the child is constantly trying to get better and better at reaching that ultimate goal, which is get the user to the solution to their problem as efficiently as you possibly can.
Ultimately, I'm looking at it maybe more from a business perspective, but that's business itself, is you're trying to solve problems in effective manner. And Google is one of the biggest companies in the world, right? Because they're one of the best at doing it. So you kind of mentioned, I kind of want to backtrack here. You mentioned that you kind of are listed yourself on Google. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, because I remember back in the day, my parents always told me, hey, search yourself up on Google just to see what's out there. And I don't know if that's still good advice, but I also, now as I'm getting older, kind of want myself to be that top result, so then people can see my work, or they can see, hey, this is the job he does, or this is his business, or whatever. Like, they can find me, and essentially I could see it potentially being helpful if like someone like a business owner like myself were to type in, where is an audio engineer, or where do I find, right? And you're one of the top results. I think that would be helpful. Or honestly, they would just link you to LinkedIn and then you'd find them from there. But I want to kind of hear your thoughts on this. Back then, right? People said, hey, you don't want yourself on the internet, like keep all that information. But now it's almost the opposite. What do you think kind of happened there? I kind of interested to hear your thoughts there.
Right. Well, there were kind of multiple questions in there, but the first one is, you need to keep the digital footprint that you are comfortable with. So you share as much as you are comfortable with. Don't share in the idea that, I must be out there. But the point we have here is that Google is so massively, massively big, and it's got so much technology and so much capacity to search the internet, get the internet. It pulls it all into this massive kind of like that database, that what you put out there will be found by Google at some point. So you can't hide. So anything you put on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Crunchbase or on your own website or on somebody else's website or on a forum, Google will pick up on it. And there you have this machine that is now looking at it. And when you're writing, for example, on a forum and it says, oh, signed Jason Barnard, it will think, oh, right, is that the Jason Barnard I remember from Boowa and Kwala? And if it can make that connection, it understands that it's me talking about that. So it becomes, in Google's mind, part of my digital ecosystem that it's understood. And even if I've just put my handle, if it's Jason M. Barnard, it will probably figure out that that Jason M. Barnard handle is me, even if I don't put my name on it. So you have this kind of child that's going to be building up an understanding whether you like it or not. And my perspective is, obviously, we are going to be online. We can't completely hide. And one of the first things we all need to do, both for ourselves as individuals and for our business, is take control of what this child understands. Because what this child understands is what it's going to show people when they search your name, but it's also what the child will understand in terms of what you do and who your audience might be for that wider picture you talked about of ranking for finding an Audi dealer in your region. So one of the most important things that I'm trying to do is say, search your name on Google and see what it has found, see what it thinks is interesting, see what it thinks is important about what you're doing, and then start to work to educate it, to teach it exactly what is interesting, what is important, and what you really want to get across to your audience. So it's about controlling your identity in Google's brain.
That was a great response. I think it kind of touched on like, no, I was blown away. That was a great response. I think, again, it shows maybe the importance of what you put out there. And I don't know if you have time for something funny. So when I was back in high school, I actually searched my name and there was this video that popped up and it was something I did, right? And I was like, I'm not even the one recording it, right? And I was like, what the, like, how'd this get out type of thing? And I was like, I mean, it was something stupid that I was doing. I was like, it's fine if people see it. I don't care. But I'm like, what the, like, I don't even remember anyone recording this, anyone doing anything like that. And I'm like, and all of a sudden I see me, right, in a video doing something. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crazy. Like that this is on Google. So
Sorry, it's actually a really good point, and I kind of interrupted you, and I do apologise, but I think it's a really important point to bring in. I was talking about your own digital ecosystem that you create, but you're right. Other people create things for your digital ecosystem, and you can't change what people have put out there, but what you can do is educate Google to understand that that isn't important and that what you're trying to get across is important. And it kind of creeps into online reputation management. And part of the trick, and it's the trick that I'm trying to learn as best I possibly can, is to make sure that Google understands, and this is absolutely fundamental, it's looking for what I call an entity home, which sounds a little bit kind of complicated, but it's basically where do you live online, which is the website or the web page that represents you personally. So that when this child sees that information, that video, and it thinks, oh, I think that's the Josh I know, and it comes to the Josh I Know's website, and it looks and it sees that it's not present there, and it says, oh, that probably isn't very important then. So your way of being able to educate and ultimately not obviously control, but heavily influence this child that is Google and learning about you, is to get it to understand which is your website, so that it will always come back there to double check whether or not the things around the web about you are important or not to you. Obviously, if it sees something in a massive the New York Times, and you don't talk about it on your entity home, it will still think it's important, so you can't control it. But certainly, at a very large level, the child is looking to you to tell it what's important, what's valuable, and what's helpful to your audience.
Thank you for clearing that up. I think a lot of people that'll help answer some of their questions. Because I mean, just everyday people, right, that are out there, I think they're a little concerned about that. It's something that is on their mind. They're like, 100%. I don't know if I'm getting recorded and someone puts something online. I remember someone told me, they're like, they hate art. They're like, I would hate to grow up in your generation because everything's documented and published online. But it kind of almost gives you some relief to say, hey, like, you can kind of influence it so then it shows like the true you, what you actually want to provide to the world, what it is that you makes you valuable, I would say, instead of something stupid you did way back when. I mean, it's still there. It's still there, and I think it can serve as a learning experience, but it also can kind of help you get that reputation, like you said, and show who you are.
And one thing that is in fact important, I'm kind of starting to dig into is, let's say that was posted on Facebook. It still exists on Facebook and people will still see it and potentially find it on Facebook, but you can definitely push it down, get it out of the way on Google if that's what you aim to do. And ironically, just today I was doing some slides for a course, an online course that I'm publishing about how to do this, about how to get rid of the stuff you don't want, the negative content or the less than positive content. But there's another really interesting point, and this takes it mind-blowingly far, is this idea of Google building a knowledge graph, i.e. building an understanding, an encyclopedic understanding for a child algorithm, in order for that child algorithm then to serve its users to get them wherever they want them to go most efficiently. Facebook are doing it, Twitter are doing it, Apple are doing it, Amazon are doing it, Microsoft are doing it. All of these big tech companies are building these child machines that understand the world, that are aiming to understand you and aiming to use you to satisfy their users. So in fact, the Google as a child perspective that I'm using and how to educate it applies to all of these machines. So potentially you could figure out how to educate the Facebook child, the Twitter child, the Apple child, the Microsoft child, which I'm already doing, and the Amazon child as well. So kind of this Google as a child just flies so high, and it's mind-blowing to what extent my little niche is actually applicable to everybody everywhere online.
Yeah, I like that. That's you keep referring to Google as a child. Is that, I mean, I think I understand this, but just kind of clear this up with the audience here. What is it, kind of like just a development, like it's in its early stages, it's not even to where it can be right now? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, it's a child with an understanding of the world. I mean, let's take Wikipedia, for example, which has, I can't remember how many facts it is in Wikipedia, let's say 50 billion, I don't really know. The child has 100,000 billion. It's got so much more information in its little brain than Wikipedia. Wikipedia is peanuts next to what this child learns or knows. But even if the child's got 100,000 billion facts in its brain, it wants to understand absolutely everything in the world. It doesn't have an idea of notability. It has an idea of, I want to understand. So whoever you are, whatever your business is, whatever record, music albums, street names, houses, buildings, places, times, events, it wants to understand every single one of them. So that's absolutely massive. And its aim is pure understanding. So from kind of that perspective, it's a child that is learning incredibly quickly. And it is a child also, don't forget, with a perfect memory. It doesn't ever forget.
Imagine that. That would be...
So you have this child that is, and as we talked earlier on about machine learning, the more the Google engineers improve their own mathematical formulas to help the child, and the more they feed in this corrective data that helps the child understand where it's getting it right, where it's getting it wrong, and the more Google engineers find ways to feed the child information that is reliable, the faster and the faster and the faster the child will learn. And a guy called Fabrice Canel, who's the head of BingBot, which is Microsoft's equivalent of Google, Bing, says that the intelligence of these machines is increasing exponentially. And he actually runs the part of Bing. And he's saying, we don't understand as human beings just how quickly this child is getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And it's exponential, which is this incredible, like, hockey stick curve. And he says, I'm actually building this thing, and I find it stunning and a little bit frightening.
Frightening on the last part. How can it be frightening for some of the listeners here? I mean, they don't really know much, and then also, how could it be scary, I guess?
I think it's frightening simply by the speed. It's a speed that we've never seen as human beings before. And it's a whole technological kind of area that we've never seen before. looking back to the printed press, which was actually before my time in the 16th century or 17th century, that was a massive, massive change where people didn't have to write by hand. It was printed, so you could duplicate and people could share information. This is equivalent, but even bigger.
Yes.
I would argue. And the speed at which it's moving is what can potentially be frightening. How much these machines can digest and understand can be frightening, and how much they can get wrong is frightening. And from our little perspective of our little corner of the internet, the way we can deal with that fear is to think about the fact that the machine is getting smarter. We have a certain amount of control over what the machine sees, understands, and digests about us, and we need to start doing that now and not tomorrow. And if we can control today while the machine is still a small child learning, that information and that understanding about us and the confidence it has in that understanding about us will be so heavily anchored in its brain that we will have a much, much easier life later on when things do get really, really complicated. So I would suggest dealing with this situation now in a responsible manner. And that's important. Google is a child. We're the responsible adults. We're the ones educating it. And people who say to me, and I get this a lot, is, yeah, but Google should just understand. Why is Google getting it wrong? And the answer is, because you're explaining it badly.
Interesting.
Explain it better, Google will get it.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I kind of like the analogy you used there. It's really cool that you compare it to a child and then we're the adults right now. And because eventually, right, it's going to become that adult, right? And quite frankly, it's going to do things a lot better than we can. And then we're going to be the old people, right, that the adults are going to have to take care of anyway, right? Like, it's that middle range that they're taking care of us, and it makes our lives hopefully easier. I mean, that's ultimately what we all want. We're someone that if we can find an easier way, we always will take it. So I like that comparison you made there to that we're the adults right now and we need to actually influence the child. So then when we're older, it can actually take care of us. So, sorry, did you have some thoughts there?
No, I was kind of thinking as well, that idea, and I think I probably repeat it too many times, but I don't actually think you can, is that Google's looking after its users. Its users are its clients. That's how it makes money. And it wants to get them to the solution to their problems as efficiently as possible. And now our role is to make sure the machine understands and is confident it's understood when our solution is the best one. And that's the fundamental key. It's saying, if I can educate this child about who I am, what I do, and who my audience is, then it's able to present me to its users when they search for something for which I will be actually helpful and valuable to them. And so kind of that understanding and the confidence it has in that understanding is fundamentally important. And then you move on to the next step, which is credibility. So if it's understood me and my competitor, I need to convince this child that I'm a more credible solution, that if the child sends the user to me for the solution, that user will be happier with the solution I have provided or more satisfied than if it sends them to my competitor. So you have a concept of understanding, credibility, and the third one is that the user is looking for a specific way to digest maybe the content, and Google's trying to find the best way for Google to deliver it. So you need to make sure that your content is in a format that suits Google in how it's trying to serve its users. So I have a triple kind of idea, which is understanding, credibility, and suitability to Google's search engine results page. Okay,
yeah, that's great 3 points, by the way. That was, I think that's
it's all so simple. That's what I can't believe. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it suddenly all seems very simple to me.
That's cool, and I kind of want to I want to drop the intelligent question of the day on you here, and it's, I mean, you talked about those points, those 3 points that you made, but so my audience is primarily, I would say, kids ages 18 to 24, and then I have another audience size as well. But some of these kids are making decisions, they're making choices about what they want to do with their life, how maybe they want to appear online, how they want to internet to perceive them, Google to perceive them as well. And I would ask, as the intelligent question of the day, how do you take that responsibility? How do you take that responsibility to nurture that child as Google's a child. How do you nurture it
Right.
and take that responsibility so then once it's, grown up, we can have an easier life?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's an intelligent question. It's an incredibly important question too, and the answer is incredibly simple, which is lovely. So that's a kind of lovely way to get through to the end of this. The first thing you need to do is we come back to what I was talking about, the entity home. You need to create a place on the web that you control 100%. Where you can present and lay out to Google who you are, what you do, who your audience is, and what might be important to them. And what's important to you, of course. And interestingly, my nephew recently asked me to set him up a website. So we bought his domain name, which is his own name.com, or it could be his own name.person, or his own name.co, or his own name.whatever. Or .me is another good one. And set up a simple WordPress website. You can do it on Wix, you can do it on Squarespace, you can do it on any of these platforms. And it's only one page. But it's one page where he says, this is my name, this is who I am, this is what I do, these are my social platforms, and this is the important content around me that you, Google, need to understand. And if people are searching my name, this is what you should be showing them. And so it's a really simple initial step today is to say, I make sure that I have one page on one website that I own 100%, where I can present this information and start educating the child. And one mistake a lot of people make is say, well, I'll use my Instagram account or my Facebook account. You don't own them. They can close your account. They can put anything they want on the account. It belongs to these big tech companies. Twitter, the same thing. Elon Musk buying out Twitter. If Google looks there for facts about you, you're in trouble, in my opinion. Facebook, the same thing. Instagram, the same thing. So the thing about the site, let's say my site, jasonbarnard.com, is it belongs to me and I can put whatever I want on there at any time. I can change it any time. And the child knows that when it comes back to this site, I am telling it my story in my words, the way I want it to understand me and present me to my audience. And if you start that now, it's one simple page website, making sure that you own the domain name. And a domain name, if you register it with somebody like GoDaddy or hover.com, is $15 a year.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone that's listening. That's the intelligent answer of the day. That was a great answer. Thank you. And I think that'll help clear a lot of things up. I mean, you mentioned the social media platforms there. It's true. You don't own the content, the stuff that you put out there. I think, like we've said, Instagram at any moment can just say, hey, we don't like what you're putting, kill the account type of thing. And it's a little scary, but at the same time, I like what you said. You need to take 100% control and put your own content out there, and website, just simple one page saying that this is who I am. This is, if people search me up on Google, this is what I want people to know about me.
Exactly.
So,
and that's the simple, intelligent answer to the intelligent, incredibly important question you asked.
Thank you. I've had a pleasure just learning from you. A lot of people, when they listen to this podcast, they think that I know all the things that I'm asking. I actually don't know a lot. It's much, I learned just as much as they do. It's a fun dynamic, but I definitely learned stuff today. I'm sure the audience learned things today as well. But you mentioned, you have your cartoon, you have your probably one-page website if people want like examples, anything like that. What's the best way that they can find that? What's the best way that they can get a hold of you if they want to do business with you or, get some advice from you? What's the best way they can do that?
Well, the really simple answer is you search my name, Jason Barnard, Jason space Barnard. And what Google then shows you is my website, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, search engine journal articles, and the book and my courses and my company. And basically that allows you to choose how you want to engage with me. You can go and engage with me on my company if you want to do business. You can visit my website if you want to understand more about me or read more about all this work that I'm doing. You can engage with me on Twitter. And the idea there is that that's my business card. It's my Google business card. search my name, you see my Google business card that I have designed to show you or give you the options of how you want to engage with me. I mean, if you're running a business like you are, I would honestly recommend the book. The book is a really good introduction to this whole approach that teaches you how to get into digital marketing without knowing anything about it, without knowing anything about Google or the technical aspects of it, and yet build an amazing, strong business online. It's, once again, it's simple, it's accessible, it's intelligent, and it's common good sense applied to great marketing. I recommend the book.
All right, yeah. And that can be found on Amazon, any other of those platforms as well.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So
yes, exactly.
Thank you for coming on, Jason. I've really enjoyed the conversation we've had today. Like I said at just a minute ago, I've learned a lot. Hopefully maybe you learned something from me. I would hope you did, maybe not.
Yeah.
But
well, what I did learn is the intelligent, incredibly important question that I generally don't answer if people don't actually bring it up. And that's definitely a question I need to now bring into every conversation is how do we start? And how do we start managing our own identity in Google's brain? But in all of these machines is we start with one page that we own where we represent ourselves in the best way we possibly can.
Yes, that right there is... that I could just cut it off right there, and that's one of the most amazing. That sums it up. I love it. But no, thank you, Jason, for coming on. It's been an absolute blast. Just thank you so much. So everyone,
thank you so much, Josh. That was absolutely brilliant.
So everyone, that is Jason Barnard. As you can tell, he's a very intelligent person. Has great things to say. He dropped his information there, how you can find him. When I asked for the information there, and you guys can go find him and engage with him how you guys want to. Stay tuned till next week. We have a great guest lined up for you guys as well. See you guys next week, and let's get after it. Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com and fill out the form there. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.